What if a man defeated an empire's deadliest enemy, stopped a genocide, and saved God's people, all without ever mentioning God's name? Meet Mordecai, a humble Jew in ancient Persia who didn't preach, pray aloud, or build altars, yet changed history with his silent faith. He stood against a man who demanded worship, outsmarted a plot to destroy his people, and rose to power in a foreign land. His story, hidden in the Book of Esther, is a thriller of courage, strategy, and God's invisible hand. Want to know how he did it and what it means for you? Stick with me. This tale will grip your heart and challenge your faith. Mordecai wasn't a prophet, king, or priest. He was just a Jew living in Susa, the glittering capital of the Persian Empire, far from Jerusalem's temple and Israel's glory. Esther 2:5 tells us he was a Benjamite, a descendant of Kish, the father of Saul, Israel's first king. That's no small detail. It sets the stage for a cosmic showdown. Mordecai's family line carried the weight of an ancient failure. Saul was ordered to destroy the Amalekites, a nation that attacked Israel in the wilderness, but he spared their king, Agag, 1 Samuel 15. Centuries later, Mordecai would face Haman, an Agagite, a descendant of that same cursed line. This isn't just a story, it's a spiritual war, a clash between God's people and an ancient enemy. Ever feel like you're caught in a battle bigger than yourself? Mordecai was, and he stood firm. Picture Susa, a city of palaces, power, and danger. The Jews were exiles, scattered far from home, living under Persian rule. Mordecai raised his cousin Esther as his own daughter after her parents died. He wasn't loud about his faith, no public prayers, no sermons. The Book of Esther never mentions God's name. Not once, not Elohim, not Yahweh. It's the only book in the Bible with this silence. Yet God's presence pulses in every chapter, moving behind the scenes like a master strategist. Mordecai's faith wasn't flashy, but it was fierce. He didn't need to shout God's name to live for him. Isn't that wild? What does that say about how faith can work in your life? Here's where the story gets intense. Mordecai told Esther to hide her Jewish identity when she was chosen for King Ahasuerus' harem, Esther 2:10. A Jew hiding her faith in the heart of a pagan empire? That sounds like compromise, doesn't it? But it wasn't fear, it was strategy. Persia wasn't safe for Jews. Revealing her identity could have meant death. Mordecai, like the men of Issachar who understood the times, 1 Chronicles 12:32, knew when to stay silent and when to act. His faith wasn't weak. It was wise. He was playing a long game, trusting God's plan to unfold. Ever had to hold back to protect something bigger? Mordecai's silence was a shield, and it set the stage for a miracle. Esther's beauty won her a place in the king's palace, eventually making her queen. No one knew she was Jewish, not the king, not the court. She was a hidden seed, planted in the heart of power, and Mordecai was the one who prepared her. He didn't just raise her, he positioned her for a purpose. Her silence wasn't denial, it was timing, waiting for God's moment. Mordecai's faith worked in the shadows, trusting a God who didn't need to be named to be in control. Can you feel the tension building? This quiet faith was about to spark a revolution. Keep reading. This gets gripping. Enter Haman, the villain who changes everything. Esther 3:1 introduces him as Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, promoted to the king's right hand. That word Agagite is a neon sign. Haman wasn't just a power-hungry official, he was a descendant of Agag, the Amalekite king Saul failed to destroy. This is no coincidence, it's a spiritual rematch. The Amalekites were Israel's ancient enemies, cursed by God for their cruelty, Exodus 17:16. Now Haman stood against Mordecai, a clash of lineages, a battle of kingdoms. Haman demanded everyone bow to him, but Mordecai refused, Esther 3:2. Why? Not pride, not stubbornness, faith. Bowing to Haman meant giving reverence that belonged only to God. Ever faced pressure to compromise your beliefs? Mordecai's stand will inspire you. Haman's reaction wasn't just personal, it was demonic. When Mordecai wouldn't bow, Haman didn't just target him, he plotted to wipe out every Jew in Persia, Esther 3:6. This wasn't revenge, it was genocide, a decree to slaughter an entire people. Haman's plan echoes the spirit of the Antichrist, a figure who exalts himself above God and seeks to destroy his chosen ones. Mordecai's refusal wasn't just about one man, it was a stand for God's people, a spark in a spiritual war. The Bible says, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom. Esther 3:6. Can you imagine the stakes? One man's faith triggered a storm that could have ended a nation. When Mordecai heard of Haman's decree, he didn't negotiate or run. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and wailed in the streets of Susa, Esther 4:1. No prayers are recorded, no mention of God, but his actions screamed faith. He wasn't mourning just for himself. He was grieving for his people, for God's promise. Then he did something radical. He called for a fast. He told Esther, "Go gather all the Jews in Susa and fast for me 3 days." Esther 4:16. No mention of prayer, no divine vision, just fasting. Raw, desperate trust in a God who works in silence. Ever felt like heaven's quiet when you need it most? Mordecai's faith in the dark will hit you hard. This fast wasn't just a ritual, it was a spiritual weapon. Mordecai knew this wasn't a political fight, it was a battle against an ancient evil. Fasting without words, mourning without prayers, showed a faith so deep it didn't need a spotlight. He trusted God was moving, even when nothing seemed to change. And something did shift. The king couldn't sleep one night and had the royal records read to him, Esther 6:1. By chance, they read about Mordecai uncovering a plot to kill the king years earlier, a deed forgotten until that moment. Coincidence? No way. This was God's invisible hand, turning the tide. Ever seen a moment where everything aligns perfectly? That's what's coming next. Here's where the story flips. Haman, the man who planned to hang Mordecai on a 75-foot gallows, was forced to parade him through Susa in royal robes, proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." Esther 6:11. Can you picture the irony? The proud Agagite, humiliated, leading his enemy in glory. Haman's gallows, built for Mordecai, became his own execution site. Esther 7:10. No thunder, no angels, just divine justice, quiet and unstoppable. Mordecai, the forgotten exile, was exalted as second to the king. Esther 10:3. God didn't need to speak to win. Ever seen justice sneak up when you least expect it? This is God's signature move. Mordecai's rise wasn't about power, it was about faithfulness. He didn't seek glory, he sought God. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. When Haman demanded worship, Mordecai stood firm, risking everything. When genocide loomed, he fasted, trusting a God he never named. His faith moved heaven without a sound. The book of Esther shows God working behind the scenes, using a man who didn't preach but lived his faith. What does that say about your life? Can you trust God when he's silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is getting personal. The battle wasn't just Mordecai versus Haman, it was God's promise versus an ancient curse. Haman, the Agagite, carried the spirit of Amalek, a nation sworn to destroy Israel. Mordecai, from Saul's line, finished what his ancestor started. This wasn't just a victory for the Jews, it was a redemption of history. Esther 9:25 says Haman's plot returned on his own head. The genocide was reversed, the Jews were saved, and Purim, a holiday of deliverance, was born. God's sovereignty didn't need a spotlight, it needed a faithful heart. Ever wondered how your small choices could shape history? Mordecai's story will make you rethink everything. This story hits close because it's not just about ancient Persia, it's about us. Mordecai faced a world where evil seemed to win, where God seemed silent. Yet he stood, fasted, and trusted. His faith didn't need words, it needed action. Today we face pressures to bow, to compromise, to blend in. Mordecai's refusal to kneel challenges us. Will you stand for what's right, even when it costs you? His silence teaches us that faith isn't always loud, it's steadfast. What's one moment you chose faith over fear? Share it below, I'm reading every comment. Mordecai's life shows that God doesn't need spectacle to move. A sleepless king, a forgotten record, a gallows turned against its maker. These aren't miracles, they're providence. God worked through Mordecai's quiet courage, Esther's hidden identity, and a nation's desperate fast. The Jews were saved not by swords, but by a God who writes reversals with invisible ink. Esther 10:3 says Mordecai was great among the Jews, seeking the good of his people. He wasn't a hero because he was loud, he was a hero because he was faithful. What's God calling you to stand for today? The book of Esther is a thriller, but it's also a mirror. It asks, what does faith look like when God seems absent? Mordecai answered with his life, silent, strategic, unshakable. He defeated an anti-Christ figure not with words but with obedience. He stopped a genocide, not with power but with fasting. He rose to greatness, not by chasing glory, but by trusting God's timing. This story isn't just history, it's a call. You're in a world that demands you bow to its systems. Will you stand like Mordecai? What's one choice you can make to trust God's unseen plan? Let's talk in the comments. Thank you for diving into Mordecai's story with me. If it stirred your heart, hit that like button, share it with someone searching for truth, and subscribe for more stories that uncover the Bible's hidden power. Check the pinned comment for books to go deeper, and join our community to keep this conversation alive. Mordecai stood in silence, but shook an empire. Your faith can do the same. See you in the next one.